By the time the Galactic Council's emergency sirens began to howl across the chamber, 27 human diplomats were already dead, their blood floating in red spheres through the shattered gravity field of Docking Ring 9. No one in the chamber would later agree on who spoke first. Some said it was High Mediator Salak, his frills flat with shock as he demanded that the transmission be verified. Some swore it was the Kalar ambassador, already shouting that the footage had to be fabricated because no empire would be insane enough to strike a neutral delegation under council seal. But every species present remembered the silence that followed when the image clarified and the insignia on the attacking ships burned bright through the smoke. The gold fang of the Voss Dominion. The delegation had gone to Halcyon Station under truce law, under council law, under the oldest protections in interstellar civilization. They had gone unarmed. They had gone carrying a warning. And now their bodies were spinning in vacuum. The warning itself had been simple enough that half the chamber had mocked it when humanity first delivered it 6 cycles earlier. The Voss Dominion had begun seizing frontier colonies, taking ships, enslaving crews, and dressing piracy in the language of ancient imperial right. Species that protested found trade routes strangled and border systems burned. Species that submitted survived. Humanity, still dismissed by many as a young, emotional, overindulgent people from a wet little death world, had sent a single envoy to the council floor and a single message to the Dominion. Withdraw from protected lanes, release civilian prisoners, and never touch a diplomatic vessel under council charter. One warning, the human envoy had said. We do not repeat ourselves. The chamber had laughed then. Even the council species that respected human industry considered the statement melodramatic. Humans had only been spacefaring on the galactic scale for a fraction of the time of the elder powers. Their fleets were efficient, yes. Their legal scholars were relentless. Their colonies expanded with unnerving discipline. But the Voss Dominion had ruled more star systems than humanity had language families. Their war castes were born in armor. Their throne fleets were older than Earth's first radios. The idea that humans could draw a line the Dominion was not permitted to cross felt less like policy and more like theater. And yet, after the laughter, the human envoy had added one more sentence, quiet enough that the chamber had leaned in to hear it. You mistake restraint for fragility. Now Docking Ring 9 was gone. The diplomats were dead. And the last words recovered from the human delegation's bridge were not screams, but a calm acknowledgement from Ambassador Eliana Ward as the hull alarms rose around her. This is a sealed council mission. You are in violation of interstellar law. If you fire, there will be consequences. The Voss commander had answered with contempt. Then let consequences come. He fired. The footage reached Earth before the wreckage stopped drifting. In the first hour, the council expected rage. Human beings were famous for passion, for grief worn openly, for the way they bonded across bloodlines and made memory into ceremony. News networks across 100 worlds prepared for scenes of mourning, protests, demands for justice. The Voss court prepared for the same. Emperor Kael Voss himself reportedly told his admirals that humans were soft-centered creatures, dangerous only in speeches. He believed they would seek sanctions, inquiries, legal review. He believed they would beg the council to act on their behalf. He believed the killing of diplomats would force humanity into the familiar rituals of weaker civilizations. He was wrong in the first hour. There were no riots on Earth, no retaliatory strike, no public threats. Human channels went silent, except for one official transmission from the Terran Commonwealth Foreign Office, broadcast in every council language with machine-perfect clarity. The Terran Commonwealth confirms the unlawful destruction of diplomatic mission Halyard and the murder of Ambassador Eliana Ward and her delegation under recognized truce protections. The Voss Dominion has committed an irredeemable breach of interstellar law. In accordance with standing doctrine, the Commonwealth has entered Condition Black. No further warnings will be issued. That was all. The galaxy did not understand what Condition Black meant. The phrase was absent from trade briefings, naval registries, and strategic databases. No public doctrine carried the name. Council analysts tore through centuries of human military history and found references only in redacted fragments buried beneath treaties and procurement budgets. A Kalar intelligence minister laughed when he heard the code. "It is posture," he said. "The young always give their anger dramatic names." He stopped laughing 36 hours later when the Voss extranet went dark. Not jammed, not damaged, erased. Relay spines across Imperial space. Systems thought too redundant to fail simply ceased to exist in coordinated waves. Some self-destructed from internal command overrides that no Voss code had issued. Some vented their reactor cores into hard vacuum. Others turned on nearby military arrays before going silent. At first, the Dominion blamed sabotage cells, then piracy, then Council interference. It took them too long to notice the pattern, because the pattern was impossible. Every relay killed itself exactly 1 second after receiving a burst transmission in an archaic mathematical format used only in pre-contact human deep space experiments. Ghost language. Dead code. A handshake from an era before the galaxy knew Earth existed. By the time Voss Cyber Command understood that the transmissions had not come from outside the network, but from devices already hidden within it, humanity had opened the second layer. Freighters. That was the galaxy's first real glimpse of the mistake. For 2 centuries, human commercial expansion had been treated as an industrial phenomenon, not a military one. Terran bulk haulers, ore tenders, refinery tugs, medical arcs, agricultural barges. Everywhere the galaxy built lanes, humans built logistics. They hauled cheap. They repaired fast. They asked for little and remembered everything. Most elder species looked down on such work. Great powers prized dreadnoughts, tribute worlds, symbols. Humans built supply chains so dense they looked boring. So dense, in fact, that entire sectors grew dependent on Terran freight without noticing it, including the Voss Dominion. When Condition Black activated, 12,000 registered Terran-owned commercial vessels inside or adjacent to Voss space transmitted the same legal declaration to local authorities. Assets requisitioned under wartime emergency charter. Then they changed shape. Cargo hulls split open along seams no scanner had ever flagged. Container spines unfolded into missile forests. Docking collars detached to reveal spinal rail arrays. Refinery modules vented decoy clouds and hardened into armor. Hospital ships that had spent decades earning the trust of border populations dropped false transponder skins and became electronic warfare platforms so sophisticated they could make fleets see stars where there was only empty dark. Every customs exemption, every trade concession, every sneer about humanity's obsession with infrastructure had just become a weapon buried inside the Dominion's ribs. Panic spread before the shooting did. Imperial convoys vanished between one checkpoint and the next. Fortresses found their targeting grids blinded by rescue ships that had delivered medicine there the previous month. Fuel depots detonated after maintenance drones, stamped with perfectly legal commercial certifications, turned their welding arms into shaped charges. The first Voss border admiral to report contact sent one line before his flagship lost power. The merchants are warships. Still, the Council believed the conflict might remain local. Terrans had been injured. Terrans were retaliating. It would be brutal, but limited. That illusion died over Cinder's Gate, where the Dominion sent the Third Throne Fleet to crush what it assumed was a cluster of converted civilian raiders. Instead, it found a graveyard waiting for it. Cinder's Gate was a narrow translation corridor, a place where local mass shadows forced superluminal traffic to emerge along predictable vectors. The Voss had used such choke points for centuries because every species used them. Predictability was the spine of strategy. The Third Throne Fleet arrived in parade formation, 6 capital spears forward, carriers screened behind, escorts layered in textbook depth. Their commander, Grand Marshal Torvin, expected to swat aside opportunists and restore imperial dignity on a live broadcast. He emerged into darkness so complete, his sensors briefly interpreted it as system failure. The stars were gone. Human drones, each no bigger than a life pod, had spent days releasing carbon veils and polarized particulate sheets across the emergence zone. Telescopes saw nothing. LiDAR saw lies. Heat ghosts bloomed by the thousands. Then the black itself moved. Not ships, containers. Millions of them. Shipping containers. The same ugly rectangular freight modules that passed through half the galaxy every day. They had been seeded through the corridor for years as ordinary cargo transfers, then anchored, networked, and armed. When the Voss fleet translated in, the containers awakened as a mine lattice of such density that the first 3 capital ships ceased to exist before their crews understood they were under attack. The rest of the slaughter lasted 11 minutes. Torvin attempted emergency retreat and found the exit vectors blocked by what looked like debris from dead freighters. The debris unfolded into kinetic kill webs. He launched strike wings and lost them to invisible point defense nests hidden inside hollow ore barges. He demanded long-range bombardment and discovered that half his fire control solutions had been poisoned by human spoofing weeks earlier through shared navigation beacons. At the 7th minute, the Terran fleet finally appeared, not charging, not roaring, but gliding out of the dark in perfect silence, gunports already open. Sleek warships, matte black, markings minimal, formation exact. They did not waste ammunition on crippled targets. They cut the fleet apart by command nodes, engine blocks, magazines, and sensor trunks, each shot chosen like a surgeon's incision. Grand Marshal Torvin survived long enough to record a final visual of the flagship TCS Perseverance crossing his bow. So close, he could see the human crew through the forward observation band. None of them looked angry. That image spread farther than the battle report. Elder species had expected vengeance with teeth bared, chest beating, a death world species indulging its instinct for violence. What they saw instead was worse. Discipline. A species that had not snapped, but switched. By then, the Voss court finally understood it faced more than retaliation. Emperor Kale convened his war councils, purged 2 ministers for incompetence, and ordered full mobilization. Factories lit across imperial worlds. Reserve broods were armed. Tributary species were conscripted. State media promised that humanity's trickery had peaked early, and that the old strength of the throne would now answer. The Dominion still had numbers, still had territory, still had pride. And pride is the last narcotic of the doomed. Then Earth released the archives. Not all of them, just enough. For 70 years, hidden behind layers of treaty-obedient demilitarization language, humanity had been building what its own strategists called the patience arsenal. The concept was born from a simple observation made during first contact. Older empires measured power by what they could display. Humans, raised on a single fragile planet beneath one vulnerable sun, measured survival by what could not be seen until it was too late. Every civilian system was designed with a shadow purpose. Every trade corridor mapped for denial. Every colony charter required emergency conversion capacity. Every school child on Earth learned, as history rather than propaganda, that civilization was a supply line stretched across darkness, and anything stretched could be cut. The answer was not larger swords. It was making every rope in your enemy's hand part of a snare. The archive release contained procurement records, old parliamentary arguments, memorial footage from wars before the stars, and one declassified doctrinal sentence from Terran Strategic Command. If a line protected by law is crossed with full knowledge, respond not for parity, but for permanence. The galaxy recoiled. They had thought humanity idealistic because humans argued constantly about law, ethics, rights, and restraint. They now understood that this was not softness. It was calibration. Humanity loved rules because rules marked the line between coexistence and extermination. When a power knowingly crossed that line, when it murdered diplomats under truce seal after being warned not to, humans did not treat it as one more offense in a balance sheet of politics. They treated it as proof. Proof that the offender could not be trusted to remain in the system at all. The council split almost immediately. Some demanded intervention against humanity before the war widened. Others demanded the arrest of Voss officials and unconditional surrender before more sectors burned. Many who had privately looked down on Earth found themselves staring at the practical problem beneath the fear. If humanity chose to wage total systems war, how many existing powers were defensible against a civilization that had spent generations hiding an industrial knife inside every handshake? The answer arrived from the front. The Voss 4th Expansion Armada, almost 4,000 hulls strong, attempted a deep strike toward the human colony world of New Carthage, calculating that a direct blow against civilians would break Terran nerve and force Earth to negotiate. They never reached orbit. Human scouts let them pass through 2 outer pickets, then collapsed the star around them. Not literally. Worse. Believably. Using arrays hidden inside cometary ice and merchant depots, Terran engineering ships induced a false stellar instability event so convincing that Voss fleet AIs flagged imminent solar violence and initiated emergency shelter protocols. Radiation shields rose, sensor bandwidth narrowed, formation coherence dissolved as captains maneuvered for safe vectors that did not exist. That was when New Carthage's defense ring activated. The agricultural weather stations above the planet fired gravitic shear beams into the Armada's packed center. Moonside desalination towers launched anti-ship missiles from beneath oceans. Civilian traffic tugs rammed engines with remote guidance. Even the orbital elevators, those elegant threads the Voss had mocked as symbols of human softness, became mass driver whips that flung tungsten pillars at relativistic speed. The entire engagement was broadcast accidentally by a fleeing tributary corvette. Across the galaxy, people watched a human colony defend itself not like victims, but like a civilization that had long ago accepted one chilling premise. If war comes, everything fights. The shock became terror when intercepted Voss communications began leaking. Dominion admirals accused one another of betrayal because no enemy should have known their routes so precisely. Ministers blamed the throne for underestimating Earth. Tributary governors signaled secret inquiries to the council, asking how quickly they could defect and whether Terran reprisals would distinguish between masters and subjects. Human replies, when they came, were cold, consistent, and devastatingly sane. Surrender your Voss overseers. Release all bonded populations. Open your records, and you will be spared. Resist, and you will be classified as willing participants. Whole sectors folded. For the first time in 600 years, the Voss dominion started to shrink. Emperor Kale answered with desperation disguised as resolve. If the periphery would not hold, he would cut out the human heart. He assembled the crown of spears, the oldest and most sacred war formation in his empire, and drove straight for Saul. It was a gamble rooted in the kind of arrogance only old rulers mistake for courage. The belief that every species is secretly centered on its homeworld, that threaten the cradle and the limbs will weaken. The Dominion hurled everything it had left into the approach, burned reserve fuel, cannibalized garrisons, drafted untrained crews. Even council observers admitted that if the crown of spears reached Earth in strength, the fighting could become catastrophic. Humanity let the spear come. That decision horrified the council when it became known. Systems along the approach were evacuated, yes, and harrying actions bled the Voss advance, but Terran Command did not commit its main fleet until the Dominion crossed the heliopause of Saul. Critics screamed that Earth was gambling with billions of lives. Supporters of intervention claimed it proved humans had become drunk on vengeance. Only later did the galaxy grasp the logic. Some doors are easiest to lock after the intruder steps through. The Sol system the Voss entered was not the one on their maps. Mercury's mining halos were gone, having drifted into attack grids. Venus's atmospheric harvesters masked shield arrays thicker than fortress walls. Mars had turned its orbital industry into a ring of autonomous arsenals. The asteroid belt, once clutter, woke as a distributed weapons platform beyond anything the galaxy had imagined possible. Thousands of civilian habitats vented their outer shells and revealed point defense nests. Telescope stations became targeting relays. Research craft became hunter-killers. The moon itself split open to expose batteries buried since the first expansion age. And farther out, from behind the cold light of Neptune, the true Terran fleet emerged at last. It had never been stationed at Earth. It had been stationed around the idea of Earth. Layer upon layer of reserve force, black-hulled and silent, translated in precise intervals until council observers stopped counting. Dreadnoughts longer than city districts. Carrier swarms nested inside logistics whales. Repair ships armored like fortresses. Missile tenders carrying enough ordnance to rewrite small wars by themselves. The Voss had expected a homeland defense fleet. What they found was the physical expression of a species that had spent centuries being called young and had decided, quietly, to make age irrelevant. Then, Admiral Imani Rao transmitted to Emperor Kale on an open channel. Her face was calm, her uniform plain. No medals in sight. Only the flag of Earth and the seal of the Commonwealth behind her. "You were warned once," she said. "You crossed law under witness. You murdered our diplomats. You enslaved civilians. You targeted our colonies. There will be no second warning, no negotiated misunderstanding, and no restoration of your old borders. Order your fleet to power down and surrender for tribunal." Kale, watching from the throne carrier Imperious, still chose pride. He laughed. The battle for Saul began with that sound still echoing through the channel. Later historians would describe it as the moment the age of imperial warfare ended, because the Voss met not a fleet, but a civilization synchronized for annihilation. Terran formations never overextended, never chased bait. Wounded ships rotated backward into repair lines that restored them with obscene speed. Civilian auxiliaries flowed ammunition and replacement drones through fire as if they had rehearsed it 1,000 times, because they had. Human cyber units turned Voss command channels into rumor mills full of forged retreat orders and false kill confirmations. Marines boarded only when it served a system's purpose, not for glory. Even Earth's orbital defense schools participated. Their trainee AIs slaved to interceptor grids with a precision that made veteran Voss pilots think they were fighting machines born in vacuum. For 9 hours, the crown of spears tried to break through. For 9 hours, Saul broke it instead. The Imperious made it as far as Mars orbit before losing escorts, engines, and finally gravity control. Kale's flagship tumbled, majestic and dying, across the red world sky like a falling monument to its own certainty. Human Marines took it intact. They found the Emperor still in his command chamber, armor sealed, sidearm drawn, staring at a tactical display that no longer showed a path to victory. He reportedly asked Admiral Rao why Earth had hidden such strength for so long. Her answer entered 1,000 history texts. Because the purpose of power is not to be seen. It is to be understood too late by anyone foolish enough to test it. The surrender of the crown of spears shattered what remained of the Dominion. Tributary systems rebelled openly. Voss garrisons surrendered for food, for mercy, for the chance to testify against their own masters. Council investigators entered labor worlds and found the scale of imperial brutality larger than even human intelligence had claimed. Public opinion swung with ferocious speed. Species that had once mocked Terran restraint now demanded Terran protection treaties. Those who had feared human conquest discovered an unnerving limit to human ambition. Earth annexed almost nothing. It took shipyards required for reparations, seized archives, arrested war officials, and dismantled the instruments of imperial slavery. Then, it stopped. That, more than the victory, terrified the galaxy. Humanity had not fought for territory, not for tribute, not for the usual hungry geometry of empire. It had fought to make a point so expensive no surviving power could ignore it. Law mattered because humans would enforce it. Diplomacy mattered because killing envoys would summon extinction. Warnings mattered because when humans gave one, it was not rhetoric. It was mercy measured in advance. At the tribunal on Halcyon Station, rebuilt over the same scarred ring where Ambassador Ward had died, delegations from 73 species gathered to witness sentencing. The chamber was new, but the old section of hull had been preserved behind transparent alloy. Frozen in vacuum, the final damage remained visible. The ruptured corridor, the blackened seal, the place where the mission had ended. No one speaking there could avoid seeing it. Admiral Rao did not attend. Neither did Earth's premier. The Terran seat was occupied by a junior legal attaché named Nia Vale, the sort of unadorned official older species would once have ignored. She presented the evidence, recited the charges, and spoke for the dead with a voice so steady it forced the chamber into stillness. When sentencing concluded, the Kalar ambassador, who had laughed at humanity's first warning months before, requested permission to address the Terran representative. His species' pride had nearly choked on the act. The chamber watched him bow anyway. "We did not understand your people," he said. Nia Vale looked at him for a long moment. "No," she replied. "You understood us exactly. You just thought understanding meant we were safe to insult." No one laughed. After the executions, after the reparations accords, after the Dominion's sigil was stripped from maps and its throne worlds placed under permanent observation, the Council rewrote interstellar law. Diplomatic protections were expanded. Anti-slavery enforcement gained teeth. Trade transparency requirements increased. Emergency response compacts were signed at speeds that would have been unthinkable before the war. Officially, the changes were described as a collective lesson learned from tragedy. Unofficially, the lesson had a simpler name. Do not make humanity prove it. In the years that followed, human vessels returned to the lanes. Freighters again, hospital ships again, ore tenders, rescue craft, agricultural barges. They looked ordinary, almost humble. But no one in the galaxy looked at them the same way. Dockmasters spoke more carefully to Terran crews. Admirals recalculated. Emperors swallowed insults they might once have voiced aloud. Every species understood that behind the open hand stood something vast, patient, and utterly without panic. Not bloodthirsty, not irrational, worse than either. A people who would endure every slight, document every crime, offer every lawful off-ramp, and if the line was crossed anyway, answer with a precision that left nothing of the offender except warning value. And somewhere in the memorial archive at Halcyon Station, Ambassador Eliana Ward's last transmission remained preserved in full. Scholars played it for cadets. Diplomats studied its wording. Rulers heard in it the final moment before a civilization changed the balance of the stars. "This is a sealed council mission," she had said. "You are in violation of interstellar law. If you fire, there will be consequences." The galaxy heard the rest in silence, forever. Humanity had given one warning. The galaxy needed only one mistake.